This week on Houston Newsmakers, Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is now in her 14th term representing the 18th Congressional District and has been a visible presence through all of those years, but now wants to give that up to run for mayor of the city of Houston. This morning, we'll talk about why this major change in her career path and why now, why she thinks she's best for this job, and what is her path to victory. And the New Hope Housing nonprofit on the front lines of helping people and families find affordable housing is in the middle of a growth spurt for housing and education for children.
From KPRC 2, this is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
On this vote, the yeas are 415 and the nays are 14. The bill is passed.
That was a good day. That was June of 2021. The bill to establish Juneteenth as a national holiday passed. The first new federal holiday in 38 years. The beaming face of Congresswoman Jackson Lee told the story about her support of that bill. Congresswoman Jackson Lee joins me now this morning with the new ambition, which is to be elected mayor of Houston. Good morning. Good to see you.
Good morning. It's good to be here with you and all of your viewers.
Thank you. Hey, was that one of the better moments that you can remember in your career in Congress?
It was one of the better moments. 10 years I introduced legislation, and finally the legislation, the only member of Congress that introduced legislation to make in the House the Juneteenth commemoration a federal holiday was me. Right. And ultimately my colleagues in the Senate, Senator Cornyn, Senator Markey, carried the legislation in the Senate, and we got a grand day. The bill came over from the Senate, we passed it on the House floor, and within 24 hours the President of the United States signed only the 11th federal holiday in this country. And it is a holiday, I believe, about freedom. It is everyone's holiday, and it brings people together. And I see that all the time in Houston and in the state of Texas.
And we're going to talk specifically, you're here this morning to talk about your race for mayor, and that's very important. But I want to make sure I get this out of the way. Last week, the House voted out Kevin McCarthy as the speaker. That hasn't happened. And so Republicans are blaming Democrats. But it should be pointed out that Republicans started the vote. And now former President Trump has endorsed Congressman Jim Jordan. Your thoughts about that whole process, and where do you think it's going to end?
It was solely the making of the Republicans. It was the making of Speaker McCarthy. We were actually shocked. I think what our viewers need to understand is the majority party controls everything, whether it's the House or the Senate, everything. The schedule, votes, determinations about Speaker, they have the majority. And in actuality, the conference that Mr. McCarthy led, he did not galvanize that conference to come to the floor to vote for him as Speaker. What we did just a few days before was heroic. Democrats joined Mr. McCarthy to stop, which should be celebrated by every American, which is to stop a terrible pending shutdown. And it was our majority votes on that Saturday, stayed there till we got it right, that allowed the government to stay open, the United States military to be paid, and to keep thousands of federal workers doing essential work not to be laid off, along with Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and things that the families of Houston really needed. And that's why I stayed the course to be there. A couple of days later was this vote, and everyone asked the question, why would Mr. McCarthy come to the floor without the votes? Why wouldn't Mr. McCarthy ask Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries? I even asked, I sent a note to the leader and said, shared power. If he calls, let's look to shared power. And what that means is concessions or things that Democrats may be interested in for the collective body of Americans. He never called, he never asked for the support, and went on the floor and literally committed, I guess, a act of self-sacrifice. Because as the votes kept going on, we as Democrats just conspicuously thought, he's going to win because he's organized this. So in any event, that leaves that chair vacant. That is the second in line to the presidency. The work that I want to do for this city, for Houston, for getting the budget in order, for making sure that the funding comes through for the many activities and services that we need here, does not go forward until a new speaker is selected, in this instance by the Republicans, because they are in fact the majority. You can't have Democrats controlling. We're not in the majority, but we were willing to help. but we were never asked.
So I'm going to forget about the Jim Jordan thing, because that could be another whole conversation. I want to get on the mayor's race here, because you've decided that you're willing to give up your Congress seat to go and be the mayor. Why did you do that? I mean, is it just because you're just tired of going back and forth, back and forth?
Oh, never. I happen to fly very well and have flown around the world on behalf of this great city and this congressional district. But I love this city. My family is here and have benefited from this city. My husband serves and continues to serve for years at the University of Houston. I'm active in all of the colleges that are around. I've gone to every high school graduation, most of them for the years that I've served, and people wonder how I've done that. I have made those graduations. I've seen the young people here. My daughter and son have grown up here and benefited from the love and affection of the people of this community, and now I have grandchildren. But really the issue was I wanted to bring the power, the resources, the knowledge of government, management, leadership to this city, and frankly, I wanted the city to have a mayor that they could trust. I have never done a deal for anyone else but the people I represent. I wanted them to also have a mayor that cares, who can fix the basic services, who can be a strong crime fighter. There's nothing like a woman standing up to criminals, nothing like a mother standing up to those who want to do evil, if you will. And there's nothing like someone who's had a long-standing relationship with law enforcement from the Houston Police Department. I've worked with every chief. The Sheriff's Department, I've worked with every sheriff. I've worked with constables, but I have an added impact. I know the Metro Police, and I know federal police. And most people don't realize that there are major federal law enforcement agencies right here in Houston, because we're the fourth largest city in the nation. Right. And so they get acting their own cases, but they get involved when you ask, when the local authorities ask. And so I can see how we can work with them to be our extra crime fighters, the DEA, the FBI, the ATF that is fighting gun trafficking, the U.S. Marshals. So the idea is, here's a mayor who knows this city beyond the boundaries of my congressional district. By the way, you know, I served as a Houston City Council member at large, and when I left, had the largest number of votes from the people of Houston as I went off to Congress. But I want them to know a person, a mayor, that you can trust with the governance of this city, and to know a mayor who cares about the families, the children, the seniors, the entirety of this very diverse city.
Immigration is a big headline grabber right now, nationally and locally. As more local cities are getting migrants being bussed in from not only Texas but other places as well. Many cities, some city mayors have really said, look, the federal government's not doing enough. We need help. The city of Houston may be in a line for getting that kind of influx of migrants as well. What kind of challenge do you think that is, and what kind of solutions do you think you might have in place to go ahead and deal with that kind of issue in the city of Houston?
Well, I have to vigorously disagree with the governor of this state that is dumping human beings into other cities. And I've spoken to the mayors of the large cities around this nation, and it is a very difficult human crisis. I believe, as someone who has worked on immigration issues all of her congressional life, served as the ranking member on immigration, wrote a major comprehensive immigration law, I agree with everyone. Congress needs to do its job, and we're being thwarted by the conflict of extremists on the Republican side that just won't see a pathway forward. But here's what I think here. We are blessed with a number of nonprofits here who have been dealing with migrants already. They dealt with it in the early push of some years back, pre-pandemic, through the pandemic, brought them in, processed them, and those who were able to have a asylum court date, they would go on to a relative. What I would look to do is to, again, rely upon, well, first advocate for comprehensive immigration reform, push the administration to really work with Mexico so that these individuals in the other South and Central American countries, that they would really work with them not to push these immigrants across the border, that we have a system now that they can actually apply for asylum in those countries if those countries would welcome them as they come through South and Central America. But obviously, Central Americans are probably fleeing because of gang violence, slaughter, and other things that have happened to these people. But in this instance, we would have an organized task force that would work with all of the nonprofits who are taking these migrants. Most of them that get this far do have documentation of an asylum court date, and we would work to get them to their next destination. Obviously, we look to the federal government, I would, for resources necessary as they come through, but we would be humane. And I do think the temporary protective status for some immigrants, migrants, was the right thing to do. And I also think it is important that those who are here in this jurisdiction get some form of ID. The county has done it. I hope the city will look at it and consider it. It's much better to know who's here and how these people can function in our community.